You're listening to Discovering Truth with Dan Duvall. Hey friends, Dan Duvall here. Just doing that introduction thing. You know, we have a number of things available for you guys. And if you didn't know, danduvall.com is the home of this podcast. At our home, you can find all of the more recent episodes of this podcast ever since our relaunch, as well as the Discovering Truth with Dan Duvall store, where you get really cool gear like shirts and mugs and even clothing for your baby, which, by the way, I'm very excited to announce, if you guys have not been listening to the Bride Ministries Church, that my wife and I are going to have our second, and we are very excited to introduce our little girl this fall. That's right, August. And I'm just going to give you all a warning. You know, I'm going to continue to do my best with this podcast, but if there's a little lapse at the, September time frame, just understand I'll probably be, just treading water and serving my family. But we love you guys. We want to thank you to all of our patrons. Thank you for keeping this podcast supported. The web presence, everything that this podcast is able to make an impact, and we really appreciate you guys. And if you are a podcast patron, you are getting early access to these podcast discounts at our store, other benefits. So becoming a podcast patron, for those of you that don't know how to do that, is very easy. You can do it for as little as $5 a month, and that helps us to keep running this as well. So another thing, overcomeraccelerated.com. That's where we are serving survivors that want to take a learning and healing journey at the same time. We make coaching opportunities available through that platform at an extremely affordable rate when you do it in conjunction with the platform. So take a look, overcomeraccelerated.com. You can join anytime, and you can do it for as long as you want, and you can stop anytime. And there are different price points at which to enter. The only requirement is you must be working with a coach to be part of that program, either working with one through the program or outside of that program, either way. Now, a few other things, bridemovement.com, friends, that's where you find everything pertaining to Bride Ministries. And we have a lot there, prayer resources, books. We have the church, and so many other things. And, never forget, that's where real community is continuing to grow and happen. And what God is doing with our campus here in Katy, Texas is just amazing. We are building. We're paving roads and parking lots and pouring concrete, and we're just excited about what the Lord is allowing us to do here, to change lives, to train, to equip, to bring transformation. So anyway, bridemovement.com, check it out if you get some time. With that, we're going to jump right into today's program. It's going to be an extraordinary journey. Trigger warning, we're going to go there. We're going to talk about some heavy stuff, so don't be surprised. You're listening to Discovering Truth with Dan Duvall. Those were your announcements. Friends, it is time for another episode of Discovering Truth with Dan Duvall, and I am joined by an old friend of mine, an old guest. She's been with me through the years. Her name is Hope, and she is a survivor of Illuminati programming. She has done a number of podcasts with me, and you can find them on YouTube, Blog Talk Radio, iTunes, going back through these, anything with Hope in it. She has talked about the genetics of the Illuminati. She has talked about programming underground bases. We did a widely shared interview a few years back called What They Don't Want You to Know about Epstein and why he's dead, or something along those lines. And that was very impactful. She is a hero, in my opinion, and she's back to tell us more. Hope, welcome back to Discovering Truth with Dan Duvall.
Thank you. It's been too long. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, it has been a while, especially since I personally put this podcast down for like a year and a half. So I have all of
Yeah.
that. I am excited about the conversation we're going to have today because it's going to center on someone who is in the middle of the world spotlight right now and some of the crimes you are aware of that he's been involved in. And that person is none other than Joe Biden. And, in the news, there's been a lot coming out about Hunter Biden, about China connections, about clear oversights and criminal activity, in my frank opinion, that should be having something done about it. But of course, we are dealing with the systems we are. Nonetheless, you, Hope, have more to add to that narrative and in a very personal way. And so I am excited to have this conversation with you. And I just want to begin, with this. You do have a book, and for those that are listening to this, they may not be familiar with the fact that you did release that a few years ago. Tell us what that is called and where people can find it before we get into our contents.
Sure. It's called To Tell the Truth. And I go in depth detail of from really inside the womb all the way till got free. It's a very detailed book about my life, and it can be purchased on Amazon. So it's called To Tell the Truth and Hope Burl Green.
Beautiful. Okay, Hope. So this has been a long time coming. This is a conversation we've had privately. It has not been something you've been comfortable talking about, but I'm really excited you're ready to talk about some things today. So I guess I would like to start with, how did you first get introduced to Joe Biden during your programming?
Well, the first ritual and time that I was abused and tortured by Biden was actually when I was around 8. It was in, I think that around that time period, but he was involved in a lot of the political leaders are involved with things in NASA, and a lot of the rituals there were done. That they would take me under the guise that it was like some kind of school trip that I was going on, but they would have rituals specifically um, to try to uh, really root the denial programming in me, continue keep it up, and to continue to reprogram me. Um, One specific memory that I have that happened was they put me in a weightless chamber, um, where they said that they were going to send me out into space, and if I ever remembered anything, I would never be able to get back. And they would actually, put you in a suit and put you into that weightless room, and you were completely alone, and it was dark, and it they tried to recreate that to cause terror and torment that you're going to be put. And it was like a hell that you were going to, because you're going to be completely alone and no one was ever going to be able to find you. Um, so there was a lot of just terror to try to cause me to never speak about who was specifically there. Um, and of course, he was there, and Clinton was there. Um, and they were doing that all to cause division of my mind and create more denial, um, so that I would never come out. They do layer after layer after layer to make sure that you would never say who was there. And of course, I didn't know who they were as a child. I just, of course, remember their faces. Um, but it was a complete uh, terror programming, um, layered over top of each other over and over again. Just kind of when they were doing joint rituals, where, I mean, there was tons of other kids as well that were being tortured in the same way. But of course, I didn't know that at the time, but I did see other children being hurt as well. So it was around 8 years old, till about 12, but it was just periodic episodes, rituals that they would do, joint rituals, kind of where they their focus is to reprogram.
So would you okay, and were these actually happening on NASA facilities or just in conjunction with it?
No, it's actually happening on NASA facilities. Just there was areas where there were just isolated areas where they would take me, but it was definitely on the facility. There's just so many different rooms and different places on the NASA facility that people aren't aware of.
Now, you mentioned Biden and you mentioned Clinton.
Mhm.
Now, we've talked at length about Epstein. Was Epstein also connected with this part or not this part of your programming?
Not specifically during this part. Later in life, he was connected with the different sections. Like he is connected somewhat with the political realm as well, but he wasn't there in this specific situation. That was more focused on the political um, focus of what they were going to, new world order, what they were going to do, their plans were in the government. That was their focus of these rituals.
Why don't you tell our audience what it's like when you are recovering memories like this or these specific ones?
Right. Well, with all of the information about Biden, I had a breakdown. I was terrified when the election was going on, and all of these memories were flooding back. Um, I was terrified about him getting into office because I was seeing that there were specific um, agendas around him getting in office and ushering in the new world order, and um, the different things that they were planning on doing. They were giving out assignments um, for the different victims, specific assignments that we were supposed to carry out. So it was really terrifying, and I um, was having panic attacks over and over. But there's lots of emotions along with the memories, which make it. There's no way that I could make up these memories. Like it, I have, just screaming and crying and flashbacks, like it's actually happening in the moment. So, I know you helped me through that time, um, when all of this was kind of flooding back during the election and the Nashville bombing, and all of the different things. There was a lot of different things that they said were going to happen that were happening, and I knew a lot of people were getting hurt, and I was terrified that if I didn't, you know, pretty much go back or say that they, say that they're not evil, and um, bring all the denial back to the surface, that I would get killed or I would go to what they called hell, um, and just continually be in torture all the time.
So we're going to talk about that in a second. But I do remember that. I remember that season. I remember it was you, but not just you. A lot of survivors were very triggered by him taking office. I remember though watching a parade, and people would remember this parade maybe when he was elected, because one of the things he did not do was salute the military at all, or they didn't salute him, one of the two. But I remember the people, because we were still in COVID and everybody's like going down to but they all have masks on. And I was thinking, this is such messaging. This is like, remember now, like, shut up and don't talk. Don't
Mm-hmm.
speak, don't have a voice. Like, to me, I was picking that up from what I'm looking at. And I mean, knowing people like you, it took it to a deeper level. But it was
Yeah.
like, okay, it was interesting on the back of Trump's presidency and what that brought in, which was a lot of talk of, and some of that came through the Q camp, which I'm not going to say was 100% good, or 100% bad. It just was what it was. But people were talking. They were talking about conspiracy. They were talking about the deep state. They were talking about Illuminati families. All of this was actually coming to a surface conversation. People were angry. People were upset about it. And it's just like, we're going to shut all of this down. We're going to demonize anybody that talks along these lines. We're going to, remember, you don't have a voice, kind of a thing. And wow,
Right.
and things really did quiet down a bit after he got put in office. I mean, it was pretty concerted. There are
Yeah.
still terms you can't use. I was shocked.
Mhm.
Like, even on Vimeo, which is a not YouTube, like there are certain terms having to do with voting that if you use, like, they won't even post your stuff on Vimeo now. And so I mean, here we go. But you mentioned you have to go to hell, and I want you to talk about that programming, what happened, and why it happened to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And all of that wasn't a coincidence at all. It was all timed specifically, along with all the riots and all the different things that were going on. It was just specifically to trigger the victims, so that we would begin our assignments that they had already programmed for us to take and to begin. But so for me, um, Biden really stood as like an examiner of programming. So when your programming started to break down, which mine, at a certain time, which was around in my 20s, um, started to break down, and I started to have memories. So they were trying to reprogram me, um, by putting other memories. You, you know, at this point, they were taking me to a um, Christian ministry that they were trying to sabotage, and because they were having some success with helping survivors get set free. So they were really very, it's just scared that people were going to start getting free. And so at that point, they took me to New York, and New York is a huge programming. It's a freedom programming. So you're taken there if you are starting to like deteriorate. Any of your programming is starting to deteriorate, and they are trying to suppress it. And really, leaders like Benny Hinn and Marilyn Hickey, and people like that, and of course the rituals at night, um, in the early morning hours, where they would dress people up to look like the Christian leaders. They would cause lots of confusion because you didn't know, were they there, or who is the person, like, because there would be two people dressed up just like Benny Hinn, for example. That was one. So there was a lot of extreme uh, terror, like, I don't even know who this person is, or I don't know who anybody is, because they would begin to, um, this is really bad, but they would fillet their face off and put it on other people. So you wouldn't really know who was who. Um, there would just be complete and utter terror, because you were having to watch this and watch the um, just the torture and the torment that the person was going through as that was happening. And then they would put the face on someone else. So you didn't know for sure. I mean, they pretty much said to me, like, you don't even know if you're you, like, as far as like if it was someone else's face that was covering me. And so just a lot of confusion, turmoil. Um, they would make me take the knife and cut people. And so that was, just all to try to cause more and more division in my mind, um, and to be terrified that I was going to be in this continual hell of seeing the reality, because they they divide your mind over and over and over again. But in this situation, when they were reprogramming me, they were trying to really, really get me to a place to where I saw that um, being alive meant being fully alive, and like saying what was going on with me and the memories and all of that was really like literal hell, because they would say um, being fully alive, being present, and what was going on is literally for me going to be hell, because feel I was actually having to feel what it felt like to watch these people being tortured and tormented, and I thought it was 100% my fault. So I they were getting me to the place to where I paired being alive and seeing the truth, and allowing these memories to surface, and hurting people and the torture and the torment. I paired those two up. So they were really, really trying to make sure that I would never, ever want the memories to ever come out. Um, so they do specific things to try to make you think that there is going to be something to look forward to, or something to look towards, um, because if you didn't, you would just end your life. You would just say it's over. But they needed you because they were making money off you, and they were getting demonic power through you and the torture they were doing to you, and you were the product that they had spent, decades building to showcase. Um, so, you know, the main way that they were doing that is they were giving assignments to victims so that they would think that they had some kind of influence on what could happen to someone else, or something that could cover up the pain and the torment that they were going through, that I was going through. And so, just a lot of, and cause division and everything like that. But for me, I thought that I was doing something that was going to save other people, because if I did what they said that I had to do, then people would be able to live. It was really life or death. That's pretty much what it was. Yeah.
So this was in New York.
Right.
Wow. And in all of this, Biden was acting like an examiner of your programming.
Right. He pretty much would do bring you to the surface to where you were not dissociated at all, and you would feel all the feelings and the torture and all of that. And he would see if he could cause, if we would show any signs of breaking down, as far as like saying that he was specifically there or anybody was specifically there, but just over and over, am I here? Do you see me? And you just causing torture and torture and torture, to where your mind will never ever say that he's there, that he's done any of these things. So um he, you know, and then a lot of times they would put you, like specifically one time they put me in isolation, so it causes torment, because that was its own hell, um, for me as well. It's pretty much, you just always causing a fear of hell, that, and pretty much trying to reinforce the programming to where it would be, I wouldn't break down any longer. No, that was a lot of what his goal was. And the memories wouldn't surface.
Now,
Oh,
that's really awful. I mean, and that someone like this could not only be vice president for 8 years, but also elected into office. That's just my opinion, but I'm sure many of you listening will share my sympathies. This is the thing that I want to go to next, Hope. There's a lot of people, myself included, that have said things like Joe Biden is a clone, or he looks different than he used to, because he does. Maybe it was just some plastic surgery. Who knows? But he seems very different. Even the way he engages with people from 20 years ago. Now, the interesting thing is you were the first person that I have ever heard use the term two Bidens. And I'm just going to pause there. I want to let you talk about that concept and whatever you mean from your perspective and your experience.
right. So for me, that was a lot of the feeling crazy, feeling out of control, feeling terror, that they were trying to do in the rituals, and that there would be two there was two of them that looked identical. And, they would say they had put their face on another person's face. And then they would also say that or they were clones. So for me, um, it would just cause just turmoil, complete and utter turmoil. But I actually did see two people that looked identical, two Biden that looked identical. So, I fully believe that there is a clone of him. Um, I feel like that it is correct. And carrying out what they want him to do, specifically um, their agenda for him, and that goes back and forth. So I really feel like that is what's going on, because you can see a huge difference.
So, which one did they put in office? The original or the clone?
I feel like the clone was, but I believe that they are switching them back and forth. It really seems like to me, and I may be wrong about that because I'm not, in the rituals or any of that anymore. But I do know that that's something that they used in rituals and something that was going on. Um, so I wouldn't be
So,
surprised.
when you would experience them doing this in the rituals, would both of the Bidens, however that played out, would both of them have the same personality profile, temperament, mannerisms, or was there a distinct difference between the way they would act towards others that were present?
They were both completely evil in the things that they were doing to us. But you could tell a difference. It wasn't like they were identical. You could tell a difference in their mannerisms and different things that they would do. Of course, for me, I wasn't ritualized with him continually. It was just on a corporate basis, because most of my programming was country girl, Kentucky girl, um, like church. Um, and there's not really any rankings, so I don't want to make it sound like there is, but that's the only way I know how to explain it. But uh, those that were being uh, programmed specifically, continually by him.
Goodness. Now, I have another question about his children. So, everyone can see pretty clearly that there's a lot going on with the son. He has some major issues, drug addiction issues, prostitution issues, uh, international issues. They found a journal that was allegedly, but realistically written by his daughter, talking about showers with dad well into her adolescence. Not, very flattering for him. Did you ever encounter his children at any rituals to your awareness?
I wasn't actually in the rituals with his children. I feel like there probably were people that were in rituals with them, but the rituals and the torture and everything that I went through was specifically for like governmental and I kind of like a hierarchy is how I'm trying to explain it. It's like if you see a diagram that has like the the country on it, and then the states, and then the cities, and then the counties, and things like that. I mean, they have agendas for each of those things, um, and what their plan is for that. So this was more of like an overview, like a corporate kind of ritual, to where they were giving out assignments in your, like in your district. Like for example, like I had programming for like the Country Girl programming, Kentucky, specifically groomed to go into churches and um, to cause division in the churches, and then in a corporate setting they would show off their programming to see how it stood up. So they kind of use different programming in ways because they totally know how the brain works, and they're using new things all the time to control your brain. But they're showcasing that. So for me, it would be more corporate rituals, and wouldn't be as often. Um, so I never was in that, but I have no doubts that they're victims. Um, they have their victims, and their programming is, when you see all this happening and things coming out, it's their programming breaking down. Because Biden knew exactly what he was doing. It wasn't because he was ritualized or tortured. It was because that's what he was choosing to do.
Gosh. So what, if any, was Epstein's influence with the New York programming?
So Epstein was in New York. He had a lot of he helped get girls, as far as like taking girls that were being programmed, and causing, like for him, with Epstein, he did a lot of the showcasing of the different types of programming. Like for me was Pink Princess, and so he would showcase a lot of that and bring people in to see the programming, and to do a lot of, it was a lot of the trafficking portion of it, trafficking the different programming throughout. So he had a lot of connections, and he um, he was very connected in the political realm. So that's why he was a part of the rituals um, there, um, in New York.
So let's talk about developing New World Order plans. And honestly, I just want your opinions. They wanted, in my opinion, Hillary Clinton for 2016, 100%. And if they couldn't get her, in my opinion, they wanted Jeb Bush. You could trust the Bushes with the New World Order agenda, clearly. But Trump beat out Jeb Bush by a mile, and then squashed Hillary Clinton by way more than we'll ever know, because they still cheated. Now, what did the transition from the Trump administration to the Biden administration mean to the New World Order people, in your perspective?
Well, Biden, was working behind the scenes the whole time, and he was part of their plan. It was always connected with Hillary Clinton, but their first and foremost plan was to get her in office. That was huge, and their agenda would have gained a lot of ground had that have happened. But he was also like a um, backup plan to that. So they don't always have like one plan. They have, well, if this happens, then this will happen. And they're very detailed and strategic about what they do.
So putting Biden in office after the first, 4 years of Donald Trump was kind of like a backup plan.
Right, right. I mean, he was a backup plan to Hillary. So either way, he was like the one that would step in um, if she didn't get elected. He
So
would be next in line, I guess is what you'd say.
here's the next thing that I need to just put out there for the record. So one of the things that I have found, interestingly enough, in a number of systems and very well covered up, is programming connected to China. It's very well anchored and reinforced. And I have my own opinions as to why that has not surfaced in most people that have it. And that has to do, in my opinion, with artificial intelligence, frequency grids, blockchain derived reinforcement protocols, deeply intelligent programming, because I've assumed the China play is for a future wave. And one of the things that I've observed about China that I don't think is unique to my perspective, they've been a testing ground for communistic type governmental styles, population control. They have a social credit score now, so you have to act a certain way. I mean, it goes far beyond mass programming with media and entertainment. I mean, they have really pushed the limits on how far can we manipulate a society of people, and to the tune of 1 billion people or more. And on top of that, it happens to be known as the land of the dragon. If there's one thing I know about dragons and interactions with human populations, like, they're typically bad guys, not, and the Bible does talk about holy dragons in some context where it says all, dragons praise him. And we do have the seraphim, the fiery ones, but they have a lot of bad guys, and Satan being called a great red dragon in the book of Revelation. So we have the land of the dragon over in China. And then we have the whole thing that broke out with the Wuhan lab, the development of COVID, how that was a global play. Now we have the vaccine agenda. So we load up all these people with this crazy technologies, and it literally puts the world into a mass hysteria, and like, people literally lost their minds over this. How do you keep pumping your body full of something that is literally being demonstrated to cause all kinds of heart issues, sterilization in young girls, early and untimely death, strange sicknesses and diseases in the body? I mean, yet it worked for a large percentage of the population, but it starts in China. And then we have these clear connections between Joe Biden, the Biden family, Biden businesses, and China. It actually came out even before the election happened, but it was covered up by the news media. Go figure. So massive cover-ups, but clearly strong connections to China. And I'm looking at this big picture, and I'm like, I think there's something very, very huge that even hasn't really been fully explored between dormant programming in survivors all over this country and the world, China, and the usurpation of our government through the gate of the Biden administration. Now, I'm just putting out a bunch of data pieces, but I'm very interested to hear your response.
Yeah, I think that it's all interconnected. Each country, especially with China, um, their the agenda and the assignments that they place on the victims are connected. It's all interconnected, and it's going the way that they want it to go. Um, I mean, that's why you saw so much upheaval and turmoil during the elections, because they are planning that it goes in line with exactly what they say is going to happen. Um, so, especially when it comes to, you know, covering your mouth, and like, there's so many rituals that they do with trying to silence you, where they, uh, cover your mouth and torture you and that don't allow you to have any reaction, or any have any sound or anything, and it's all played in part together to form the new world order. I mean, that's the whole agenda and the whole purpose of all of it. It's connected, and it's not just happenstance things that are happening. It's all been planned way beforehand for it to happen the way it is. It's just now people are actually being are seeing it. But there was a time where people weren't even seeing that could be a possibility, or weren't aware. But one thing that with Trump that happened, I feel like greatly, it took a layer of deception and denial off of the people's minds, because things had, for decades and decades and decades, had been done this exact same way. So there had there had been a veil pretty much over their minds, but I feel like that lifted somewhat, and so Christians and people that are actually seeing the truth, it's making a difference. It's making a huge difference in what happens next in history.
Well, so Hope, um, what do you want people to understand, I guess, about the next year and a half leading up to like the next election cycle, the nature of how you know plans are playing out, and what people should do about it?
Well, first and foremost, when I was getting ready for this podcast, I want people to realize that you're playing a part in history, in God's agenda, in Jesus's agenda, if you are um, helping people get set free. The victims all over the world, that that's one less person that has an assignment that goes along with their plan. And of course, there's one more person that's free. But also, what I'd like to say is that if you really, really want to make a difference, pray about who is supposed to, pray that your eyes will be open and that you would know who needs to be in office next, and begin praying about it now, because they're already putting their plans in place as we speak. But if our prayers, that we see the truth and we don't just go along with what the media says, or what the church is saying, unfortunately, that our eyes are open and we really hear God's heart, and follow him when it comes to who we vote for, and specifically taking apart and asking the Lord, how do I help these victims get set free? Because it's like the Lord told me one time when I didn't understand why I just didn't take down the evil people. Why wouldn't you just go ahead and expose them and deal with them? And he said, because there's innocent people that are connected, that are intermingled with these people that, you know, they don't have a choice. And so as it is, taking them down would take down innocent lives. So if we step up and we ask the Lord how to vote and how to help these victims get set free, we're making a difference in history. We're making a difference in changing their agenda. We have to be strategic in what we do, because they are, and they have been for years and years and years.
So, I really appreciate, first of all, I appreciate you so much, Hope, because you are very brave. I mean, very, very brave. Not only to take on your own healing journey, but to pursue justice and to use your voice and to testify. I mean, you were also involved in a lawsuit against Jeffrey Epstein, a high profile lawsuit until certain things happened, which you are more than welcome to speak to as well on this podcast if you want to. Do you want to talk about what happened there as well?
Yeah, it's actually it's a injustice, really. I'm not surprised because there's so many people interconnected and there's a lot at stake in exposing what really happened in the underground tunnels and with Epstein. But yes, I was in a lawsuit. It started out criminal, and of course, we all know what happened with that. And then it was a civil suit. But for 2 years, I had a lawyer who was walking through these steps with me, and of course, leading up to when I would give my testimony of what happened. And the day before I was to give my testimony about how I was ritualized and abused, they called me and said that they would no longer represent me. And the person that I have been working with was very supportive and everything. He wasn't the actual lawyer. He was someone that was working for him. But he said, well, it wasn't my decision. So I know that there was a lot of they pretty much were saying, like, they didn't want all this to come out, the truth about the underground tunnels and the real rituals and torture and genetic testing and all the different things that were really going on. You know, on the surface was trafficking going on, but underneath all that, there was something even much darker.
I remember when all of that went down. I was so mad for you. I was so mad for you because I was like, are you kidding me? They just gave you a phone call. This prestigious lawyer firm that did actually represent other people, but only those that fit the profile of the storyline that publicly was allowed to be believed. It's like they found just the select voices that spoke to 20% of the problem and covered up and buried any voices that got to 21% or deeper, which included yours. Absolute injustice. I was like, I don't even know if that's legal, but of course I'm not a lawyer. But to drop you. And it was the day before or something like that. You had to go without representation.
Yeah, I ended up sharing my story and what I had suffered with the people that were in charge there, and but on my own, I went ahead and did it, and you know, they pretty much came back really fast and said, obviously something happened to you, but we because I was very emotional when I shared about my story, um, but they didn't come out and say it wasn't in the narrative that we had, but that was pretty much what the reason was.
So you didn't get any settlement at all.
No, nothing, and that's why it's sad because there's so many lies, and I don't come back at any lies or anything that's sent, videos and all the different things that are put out there about me, because I feel like the Lord is my defender and the truth will be brought out no matter what. And that's what matters. But, that it was all about like money or my book, I maybe get very, very tiny amounts of money, like $100 or something like that. And I don't get paid when I go out and go to different places to speak and things like that. It's definitely not for the money. It's just 100%. I totally want the truth to be out. I want people to understand what's going on, and I want other people to get set free. And it's whether if you're listening to this or what, however, I just pray that you get set free, or if you have the ability to help others, arm yourself with as much truth as possible and let the Lord use you to help somebody get set free.
Well, amen to that. Just coming back on a point that you had made earlier about the government, politics. This is one of the reasons why I really believe the shift in the kingdom is imminent. It's actually in process. There's a level of, where it's like, wow, we have two bad choices. Let's just keep, praying for the lesser of two evils. And then there's the what if realm. And the what if realm is really, I believe, the plan of heaven realm. What if people take heavenly assignments in these spheres? There is a groundswell and a change is imposed on the system itself. And that's where I think, there's been conversation over the years. It's like, well, God is passing out mandates for believers all over the world to actually get involved in politics, not to be a Democrat or a Republican, but to literally bring in kingdom influence into that realm and justice. And one of the things that God has spoken to me a long time ago is, a society without any systems of governance is going to be in chaos. God can't just sweep all the evil out because every system fails. And like you were saying, there's a lot of good people that will be caught up in the ensuing chaos that are going to suffer greatly. And so for an organized transition into a situation where justice is beginning to move and prevail, there has to be an order around who is being deplatformed and who is filling the void. And I really, really believe that because of testimonies and stories like yours, people that have been on the sideline with mantles and mandates to pursue governmental influence for the kingdom of God need to realize, part of that assignment to help those that are suffering is to walk out the assignment God has given us in the sphere of influence we're called to, period. because evil prevailed when good men do nothing. And
Right.
one of the things that I know at Bride Ministries is like, okay, well, we've been, building an army of people that can help survivors of satanic ritual abuse and government projects all over the world. We have coaches now in 4 different nations and growing. And that's part of the thing as well, is we don't just look at replacing, but now the additional strategy that I'm looking at is deprogramming, because there's a lot of people that are doing bad things they are programmed to do. And the heart of the Lord is that none should perish, but that all should come to repentance. And what I realize is there are people that are in positions, if given the opportunity, to be deprogrammed, they would be able to bring in massive sweeping change. And literally, because they've already been positioned, there would not be that need to come through a broken system that's working overtime to lock them out. They're already instated. And one of the things that I really do believe over time will happen with like Bride Ministries, our platform, and what we build and grow, is that we're going to be able to have the opportunity to help deprogram and deliver and bring inner healing to people that are sitting in high levels of influence. That's really my hope, is like, God is going to bring change and transformation. And I'm very hopeful, but I am very grateful for people like you, Hope, that articulate so clearly the reality of the problem and the need. So thank you.
Well, that the awesome thing about what the Lord is doing through you, I mean, each time that you and all the team that the Lord has caused you to raise up, each time that you work with someone and pray for them and they get free, it's like another link in their chain of what they're doing. Their whole agenda is completely destroyed. And so eventually it's going to be weakened to where, it has to be weakened to where it's destroyed. And so I just think there's nothing too small as far as making a choice to help victims and to help them get set free. Because it's just like, it's like dominoes, like it's like that it just comes down as the links are broken, as that's the program is broken and taken down for each person.
Yeah. Well, Hope, is there anything else you wanted to say in this podcast?
I just thank you for having me on here. I appreciate you giving a platform for people to share the truth of what's really going on in this world. It's so important. And, you don't find that, I don't find that as far as places to share the real truth, the gut level, honest truth of what's going on. So I'm really grateful for that.
Well, you are welcome. We applaud you and support you, Hope. And, we're just thanking God that he is still underwriting this effort to expose and discover the truth. And so, friends, we're going to be back next time. For now, remember, Hope does have a book, and it's called To Tell the Truth, and it is at Amazon.com. And until next time, God bless and Godspeed. You've been listening to Discovering Truth with Dan Duvall. Visit me at danduvall.com, where you will discover merch, books, and the opportunity to engage in our private social network. Join the tribe by subscribing to our email list and supporting this podcast.